I had never noticed this before, but Lisa's rival kind of feels like the Homer's enemy of Lisa episodes. I mean, they certainly share some plot points. For example, they both introduce a new character challenging the status quo, they both feature a one-sided rivalry, the final act hinges on one character sabotaging the other, and that character kinda loses their mind in the process. Also, hey Ralph. Now obviously Homer's enemy is a much, much darker affair. In challenging the status quo of Homer, you need someone to criticize how absurd the whole premise is. You need that unamused straight man character to point out how Homer somehow always gets his way. But Lisa isn't the same kind of character as her father. Her stories tend to revolve around her passions and her loneliness. To truly challenge Lisa's status quo, you need to give her everything she seemingly ever wanted. Enter Alison Taylor. I think what really works about Lisa's rival is how cool the writers play it with Alison's characterization. The whole story lives and dies by how she is portrayed. You introduce this super smart and successful girl to get under Lisa's skin, there might be the temptation to make her teensy bit condescending or braggy, really ramp up the rival part of Lisa's rival. Think Alex Whitney from season 10 as an example. Instead, they give neither the audience nor Lisa anything to really object to. Winona Ryder's vocal delivery is so straightforward and friendly, it's clear that Alison is just making an honest attempt to connect with Lisa over common interests. She literally compliments Lisa about how smart she is. Look at her enjoying Lisa's performance. Hey Lisa, you always complain about how none of the other kids get you, so what's the frickin' problem here? Even more damningly, Act 1 isn't exactly portraying Lisa's life as being great. In fact, Act 1 is practically a Moaning Lisa remake. We see how her family doesn't appreciate her saxophone, Ralph hits her up for some easy answers, the other kids aren't nice to her. But this is season 6, where Lisa's almost settled in and accepted the status quo for herself. Sure, she isn't popular, but she takes solace in her sense of achievement. It's the one thing the kids can't take away from her. She's formed her entire identity around this fact. Now, it sounds like I'm being really critical of Lisa here, like she's this unreasonably petty jerk who just can't get over herself. But as we all know, this competitiveness is entirely part of human nature. The episode understands that pretty much everyone in the audience can relate to what Lisa is going through. In the middle of the story, she and Marge have this talk, where Lisa openly questions what truly makes her special. She isn't the oldest child in the family, she isn't the only girl. If Alison is better than Lisa at everything, what does she actually bring to the table? And to be fair, it's not like she's had a lot of time to prepare herself for this shift in the status quo. The story doesn't do a Samantha Stanky-esque intro scene. Alison just comes out of nowhere and demolishes Lisa's self-esteem. There's so much excellent character acting throughout Lisa's rival. You can really see the inner struggle in Lisa's face. That big smile when she says she's sure they'll be good friends. Lisa gritting her teeth, declaring that Alison is a wonderful person. Lisa getting on Marge's case about why she never skipped a grade. Yardley Smith delivers such a wonderfully layered performance here, smiling through all that pain. You can tell that Lisa's really conflicted about her feelings toward Alison. She's self-aware enough to acknowledge that there's nothing actually wrong with Alison and that she should stop being like this. I think this is pretty important for the pacing of the story, that Lisa doesn't completely turn on Alison from the get-go. They show off her initial insecurity and then spend Act 2 poking at it. Lisa loses first chair. Lisa is rejected by Ralph. Lisa fails at anagrams. Alison has a giant trophy room. Alison has already finished her diorama. Speaking of which, Lisa's whole visit to Alison's house is fantastic. I still remember watching this scene when I was little with their whole Alec Guinness genuine class thing and feeling just as intimidated as Lisa. Like, oh my gosh, am I really expected to have to be able to do something like this when I'm older? Not understanding the joke of how absurdly challenging this game is. And then how the dad turns around and gives Lisa that ball. God, Alison's dad is such an asshole. I bet he carries that ball around just so he can do that to people. Also, while I'm gushing about this scene, I want to give a shout out to this camera angle. You don't really think of Lisa's rival as a super pretty Simpsons episode, probably because there's not a lot of action and the settings are so commonplace, but director Mark Kirkland mixed in a ton of striking compositions throughout the story. Anyway, I like the introduction of the diorama here as a plot point, how it's not foreshadowed beforehand. Once again, Alison is blindsiding the audience with new information. We inherently feel like she's one step ahead. It works well as a tangible rallying point for Lisa. It's not just a general sense that Alison is better, we have a specific contest we gotta win. The Telltale Heart framing is especially clever, how it injects a heightened sense of neuroticism in what is already an extremely neurotic episode. I've already talked a lot about Lisa's internal struggle, but honestly, almost everyone in the Simpson family seems to be living in their own head. Like, you've got Marge sitting on the couch, constantly trying to lose herself in her romance novel. Bart seems to think he's some kind of prankster mercenary, carrying around tape recorders and repeatedly laughing to himself, calling the cops on Milhouse, coming up with bizarre schemes of spraying Alison with a hose. And then there's Homer, who, has sugar on the brain. This sugar B-plot officially wins the first prize for most random and disconnected classic B-plot in the field of excellence. I bet if you ask people what episode Homer's sugar was attached to, you'd get a lot of different answers. At least in Homer's Enemy, Grimy takes notice of the B-plot. But as random and pointless this whole thing is, it works well as a change of pace for Lisa's extremely down-to-earth storyline. It certainly works thematically, with all the neuroticism and paranoia. The A-plot runs the danger of becoming too dry and sitcom-y. We get the cutaway to Milhouse and the fugitive stuff, but the Lisa-Alison story is very by the books. They don't even watch much TV in it. I like how Homer's stupid scheme injects some energy into the story. I talked about the character animation with Lisa earlier, but I'd be remiss to not mention this sequence. My god, Homer's feverish speech to Marge is mesmerizing. Reminds me of the stuff they did in The Shining a few episodes later. Then you have silly stuff like this English gentleman and this Adam West beekeeper guy. This whole B-plot is a bizarre fever dream, and I love it. Fun fact, Lisa's Rival is actually Mike Scully's first script for The Simpsons. I always kind of forget this, because Lisa's storyline doesn't remind me of his seasons, but then hearing about how the Sugar B-plot was a George Meyer collaboration, and you can connect some of the dots. To be clear, I love the Sugar B-plot and how well it balances Lisa's story, but yeah, we do get a lot of these kinds of storylines in seasons 9 through 12. My overall stance is that Mike Scully wrote frickin' Marge Be Not Proud, so he gets a free pass to have as many sugar plots as he wants. The Homer stuff gets all the love in the jokes department, but the main storyline does have some good stuff too. I talked about the ball earlier. There's the Mr. Largo fake-out over Lisa getting first chair, Lisa dreaming about being in that second place band, declaring why would they come to our concert to boo us, Marge sacrificing a very expensive camera, Nelson's Grapes of Wrath thing always gets a chuckle out of me, and of course, I bent my Wookiee. Ralph's becoming more of a non-sequitur machine around this time, but he's still endearing. The final act of Lisa's Rival feels extremely self-aware, that the writers knew these envy and revenge plots can be formulaic, and they were determined to take it in a different direction. We know Lisa's gonna see the error of her ways, there's gotta be a hook to keep things interesting. So we get these arch jokes about, wow, look at Bart making a distraction. Then the twist ending that Alison doesn't actually win first prize. And before Lisa even has a chance to feel guilty about it, she's eliminated too. It's all super fast. So far, Lisa's journey has been a deliberate one. We've gotten a clear handle on her thought process every step of the way. But once again, they go for the blind side. The quick turnaround to Ralph inexplicably winning the whole thing. I know I've been harping on and on about blind sides and foreshadowing in this review, but it's an aspect that Lisa's Rival has a firm handle on. It understands the precise moments of when to mess with the audience and the characters. Now, I don't think Lisa's Rival is perfect or anything. Like a lot of classic Simpsons, there's still the occasional joke that doesn't land. Act 2 does drag a bit, feels like they're killing some time until the diorama stuff. This Bart subplot about digging up dirt on Alison doesn't actually go anywhere. You could also make the argument that Lisa's Rival is a bit too intellectual for its own good. That Lisa's such a heady character already, that instead giving her more relationship-driven and emotional episodes creates a better sense of balance. This is, far and away, the most business-like and calculated Lisa character study in the classic years. On the other hand, I do kind of appreciate the change of pace for her, that the writers aren't relying on schmaltz to tell her story. Lisa's kind of a fiery character. She has these red-hot passions and is intensely motivated in pursuing them. Maybe to truly understand Lisa's motivation, you need a fiery storyline. I think it's interesting how both Lisa Simpson and Frank Grimes have that intense drive behind them, that sense of hard work and achievement, and yet their worlds are shattered around them for opposite reasons. Old Grimey being confronted by such incompetence that it boggled his mind, and Lisa being confronted by such hyper-competence that it made her more miserable than ever before. Throughout the years of The Simpsons, there's always been this underlying question of why Lisa never has any friends, at least permanent ones. Is this a case of Lisa being unluckier than Bart, not having much in common with anyone around her? Or with the presence of Alison, is something else going on? Is this like that military academy situation, where Lisa only wants a challenge she can do? Lisa's rival really gets at those competing elements of Lisa's personality, that inner conflict between her intense loneliness and her intense sense of achievement. I can't think of any other episodes that examine this interplay in such close and critical detail. It stands out among a crowd of Lisa passion projects and Lisa relationship stories. I think it's aged really well too, as schools have become increasingly more competitive, and with the internet, people forming more and more of their sense of identity around their interests. People get territorial and competitive about the things they love. Lisa's rival is a nice cautionary tale about this kind of behavior. And yeah, maybe this thing is never going to be as super famous as something like Homer's Enemy, and doesn't have the crowd-pleasing sweetness of A Summer of 4'2", but I think Lisa's rival is quietly one of the most important Lisa episodes. If you really want sweetness that badly, hey, I know a guy with a giant pile of sugar, he'll sell you for $1 a pound.